What's up, everybody? Ryan Thomas of the Thomas Takes Sports Podcast, bringing you another edition, another Wednesday episode, another weekly guest on the podcast. As I said, Wednesdays is guest day on the Thomas Takes Sports Podcast, and I got a good guest, Brandon Siclari of Game On Sports. What's going on, buddy?
Not much, man. What's going on? I appreciate it. Glad to be on.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm very excited to have you on. We met at the Buffalo Sports Podathon. It was the last one at Rusty Buffalo. And as I was making my rounds, I was kind of trying to meet everybody and see if there were any faces I hadn't met before. And I met you and some of the fellas from Game On Sports, Game On Buffalo. I wanted to have you on to talk about all the stuff that you guys are doing and all the events that you guys have had throughout the Western New York community. I definitely, looked you guys up after we kind of exchanged info, and I thought, what these guys are doing is pretty cool. This is pretty neat. So for the people that don't know, that are tuning into this, tell them a little bit about Game On Sports.
Oh, definitely. Game On Sports is a co-ed social sports league around Buffalo. It's been around for, 9-10 years. It got started, the main sport it got started was co-ed touch football, and kind of branched out from there. And we organize, all season long. It's spring, summer, fall, everything we have going on. If it's football, hockey, we have indoor kickball, outdoor kickballs, and that at multiple locations. So we try to cover everything from the north towns all the way down to the south towns. Golf is also one of them. And on top of that, we also try to run charitable events throughout Buffalo. We do have a couple coming up right now. But our big one that we actually have been running for the last couple of years has been our scavenger hunt we run in Buffalo. And that's for the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh, wow.
Sorry, Camp Good Days of Buffalo. And all the money of that goes right to them. And we have people, everyone meets up at I think it's Soho Burger Bars, where we actually were last year. And we sent them on this wild goose chase around Buffalo trying to find clues, and they meet back up right at Soho. And then we also have something that we're just in the works right now. We're starting to organize with BB&G Charities. Yes. We're doing a charitable kickball tournament on July 13th, so I'm really looking forward to that. But if, just kind of, throw the plug in, if anyone has any inclination and would love to join Game On Sports, at Game On Buffalo across all platforms, and GameOnBuffalo.com. You can find all registrations and any links right on there. Twitter, Instagram, anything you're looking for, we probably cover it.
That's awesome, and I find what you guys are doing to be so refreshing, because not only are you guys holding these events and raising money for great charitable causes, but you're also podcasting. You guys also have your own podcast, which is pretty cool. One for the podcast teams, right? We got to stick together.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't know it was like a group, if you will, until we went to the Podathon. And so I first saw you guys, all the podcasters. I was walking through the Galleria Mall, and we had our podcast, and I saw, you guys were right in front of Dick's Sporting Goods. I think we mentioned you were there for that. And
I was. Yep.
I was like, you know what? I really need to get into that. And then I saw something online for the next year, and we showed up, and it is a group.
Oh, it's a group. Yeah, it's in full force. It's in full swing, and it's definitely helped. All credit goes to Ranting Ron for putting that event on and putting everybody together. And I've met a lot of really cool people including yourself, that I would have never met had I not got that initial invite back in, I believe it was October of 2018. And it sounds like, yes, that's almost a year ago, and it's kind of changed and helped bring a lot of attention to a lot of not just podcasts but websites and all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it was really cool to see you guys there at that event, and then see that you guys have grown and you guys are doing some different things. Tell the listeners and everybody that's tuning in about your podcast and what you guys talk about, and how they can tune into that.
So a funny story about our podcast. So it got started, as we mentioned, we provide co-ed social sports around Buffalo, and we realized that, especially our football, that people really want to be in tuned with other teams and what's going on. And we softball and kickball are really our big draws, but football is really like a family. Every Saturday, it's one day you see the same people, and we realize, why don't we provide up-to-date stats or up-to-date, this team needs to beat this team, playoff formats, and what teams need to do to get to the playoffs. And we were sitting around so Tim Segru and Marty Finucane are the other gentlemen that are on the podcast with me. Tim basically runs the whole thing, so shout out to him. We were sitting in his back porch, and this all started with my iPhone in the middle of a table, and we just started talking, and we posted it, and then we went Facebook Live, and then it now turned into us doing a weekly breakdown of all our sports leagues. But on top of that, so we break down all our sports leagues, who needs to beat who, and we do shout outs to like plays of the week, and we do certain games, like something I did was like guess a horse. Basically, it was I made up the Kentucky Derby. I gave 10 real horse, fake horse. I did 10 real horses, 10 fake horses, and they had to decide which ones were real and which ones were fake. So we try to keep it more of like a kind of like a
it's 15 to 20 that said, "Hey, what did you think of Daenerys?" And I'm like, "Who is this Daenerys person?" I honestly, I've never watched it. That'll change eventually, but I think I wanted to let the show die off and not get spoiled and not have people, spoiling it for me, which they already did. So that kind of went out the window. But yeah, that's really cool. You guys like to mix it up, and that's how it should be. You guys should always keep it fresh. Never deviate from that.
Yeah, we're all over the place. And I said that's called ONCORE, !Core. We're on all platforms. So Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podbean. If you can follow us, it's at Game on Buffalo. We post it on there. So,
nice.
Yeah, we're all over the place. Not just sports. We try to do everything, and really give a shout out to Marty and Tim. They're fantastic, and especially Marty. You would I don't know if you. I think you spoke to him at
I did. Yeah, I did.
He had some fiery hot takes when it comes to Bills, sports, and Sabres. So,
what was the fiery take that he had that I also had? Wasn't there a fiery take that he had that I was like, yeah, I have that same take too, and you guys are like, oh no.
Well, his big thing is anything goes wrong, he instantly goes Pagula. Like, he instantly blames Pagula for that. So I don't know if that's what you guys were talking about.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. And he's so passionate about these teams where first period of the Sabres game, they could be down 3-0, and you see him just ripping them apart. They come back and tie it, and he's praising them. Like, I don't think he even really understands what's going on.
I don't rip the Pagulas any chance I get, but I definitely, back in, I believe it was actually draft day, when I had my draft day show, I had a few, Bills people on to talk about the Bills, and I had a Sabres guy to come on and talk about the Sabres, and they didn't have a head coach yet, and I just kind of went off about how, for as passionate a fan base as we have, the people are just so dialed in, I think, more than any other, sports community. And I think you could definitely agree to that, being that you guys hold sports events in the area. So you guys get to see how passionate these people are, not just about the sports teams that we have professionally, but about sports in general, right?
Oh, I mean, if they're not talking about the game they're playing, any sport, it instantly goes to Bills and Sabres. We go to our sponsor bar after our sports, and that's everyone's talking about it. So it is amazing of how, I'll give everyone credit around here. It's amazing that we still are in tune with this team, because you would think by now we would just throw our hands up in the air and go, forget it, I'm done. I can't take this anymore. And I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I've thought about doing that multiple times. What these teams put me through. I
definitely have, and then I thought, well, I went the complete opposite way. Moments where I thought, hey, I'm done, I'm sick of this is annoying, this pisses me off. I said to myself, why don't I start a podcast and talk about it? I don't know what made me decide to go that extreme. You know, I went way left instead of turning right. But it is what it is. But I have to throw out my takes too, and I support any podcast that's out there that talks Buffalo anything, because I feel like that helps educate the fans, and that helps bring light to certain situations that don't get talked about enough by the national media, in my opinion.
I completely agree with you, but to be honest, having a lot of these fans informed kind of drive me nuts. There's a lot of fans that don't think need to be informed.
Right. There's a lot of fans that take things the complete opposite way, for sure.
Yes. There's a passion. The passion that we have for all our sports is amazing to me. And I keep on saying this, and it's definitely a Bills Sabres take, that there's always next year, and I think that's what keeps on pulling us back somehow.
For sure. And now I think if I were to just pick your brain just to see where you're at as a Buffalo sports fan, what is your optimism level for the Bills, 1% being the low and 100% being high as far as the future? And then what is your optimism percentage as far as the Sabres go?
So Bills, I'm pretty optimistic. I think I'd go about 60 to 70%. Meaning, I don't think they're going to instantly maybe jump into the playoffs next year, but I feel like they're trending in the right direction. Right. I like the moves they've made. I like, I'll put my foot in my mouth. I like Josh Allen. If you could have saw me watching the draft after they drafted him, I wanted to jump out the window. I was so upset. I was talking to my friends and going, the best case scenario we have is everything falls the way we want it. Rosen and Allen are still on the board, and we'll get Rosen. Well, everything was there, and then we picked the wrong Josh in my mind at the time. But seeing him on the field and kind of seeing how he's morphing into at least a decent starter, I think that's why I have some sort of optimism when it comes to the Bills. The Sabres, I'm running on empty. I don't even know where to go with them. I give them 20, 30%. It comes to a point where they need to show me something first. I thought that after we drafted Jack Eichel, I honestly thought, I'm like, all right, here we go. We're going to pull a Carolina, or we're going to pull a Colorado. We're going to go from last to first. And it seems that they did exactly what they needed to get Eichel, and then they completely disregarded everything around them. And I was actually listening to some of your YouTube videos on my way here, and I thought you were spot on when it comes to the organization and kind of what Jack Eichel has been through since he's been here. How many coaches, what he's seen, and it's only a matter of time before that takes a toll on someone. So I'd go about 30% for the Sabres and about 60% for the Bills.
I'm right there with you, and I appreciate the positive, the good critique on my Sabres take, I guess you could say, because it frustrates me so much, because there's a part of the fan base that says, well, did Jack Eichel really earn the C, or is Jack Eichel a leader, or what is the problem at this point? Nobody knows, really. People can guess and give or take, think that this is the problem or that's the problem. But as far as Jack Eichel goes, for me, if I put myself in his skates, if you will, I look at the talent that he has had around him, and it's always walked out the door. How is that exciting, and how can he be motivated or hold his head up high when at one turn Evander Kane is out, Ryan O'Reilly's out, and at the next, Jeff Skinner very well might be out the door. So it's very tough for Jack Eichel, I think, at this point, and I don't really blame him.
No, I don't blame him. I mean, I think he's handled himself well. I mean, I'd be pissed and irritated, and in the locker room after games losing or even winning. I mean, you go from first to last. And he seems like he's the type of player that, wears his passion right on his shoulders. And I'd be pissed too. And I just don't know where they are to go from here. And I think, my opinion, I could pinpoint this into one area why I think the Sabres are where they are. And where is their diamond in the rough player, if you will? If you think back to when the Sabres were really good, you had Roy, Pominville, and this is exactly how far we have to go back to think about that. Roy, Pominville, all these players that were maybe late first or even in the second, third rounders, they were in the NHL, they came up, and they succeeded within the team. This is a question for you. When's the last time we had someone like that? Is it all the way back then? I can't think of one.
As far as a player that was like groomed through the system and ended up being great?
Sure, not even great, just serviceable.
Just service, yeah. I honestly couldn't tell you. And I mean, I think one guy that off the top of my head that is being thrown out there as if he's the next savior of the team is that Victor Olofsson, who is good and he has a lot of talent and he's dynamic and he can do a lot of interesting things that cater to today's game. Very, fast, very elusive on the ice. But I feel like the Sabres throw these players at the fans to almost justify that they can't keep player A or player B. Like, I feel like I can foresee Jeff Skinner walking out the door and then the Sabres saying, well, our first line this year is Jack Eichel, Sam Reinhart, and Victor Olofsson. And it's like, that guy's not Jeff Skinner. I'm sorry. I want Jeff Skinner. I really believe that Skinner and Eichel were feeding off each other last year, and that was like the only shining light on the team whatsoever outside of Dahlin. And I don't see what excuse you can bring to the table to a fan base that's already a little bit salty, and rightfully so, that you don't bring him back. I just don't. I would bring him back if it was $9.5 million or $8.5 million. I would bring him back.
Is that your cutoff? Do you think it's 9? Would you 9.5?
I think ideally if he ends up being a free agent, it'll be more than 9. But I actually think Jeff Skinner would stay here for 9.5 to 10. Being that he's been experienced here, it's close to home, and I really think he enjoys playing with Jack Eichel. But if they wait until the first of the month, is it July 1st?
Yes.
July 1st? Yeah, if they wait till July 1st, and he's just going to say, hey, you kind of like what Briere and Jury did. They tiptoed around the issue, they waited too long, and then Jeff Skinner will say, I gave you your time. You had your negotiation period, and you guys didn't meet it.
You can't get rid of Jeff Skinner. The reason being is you need a winger. So why would you get rid of something? You're going to then be in the market to fill a hole that you didn't have to have. And right. I feel like this is the huge circle that the Sabres are going through, is they're getting rid of these players, i.e. Ryan O'Reilly, and they're like, okay, we'll get rid of him, but, now we need a second-line center. So
right.
You need to keep these players, and I feel like they're just instantly thinking, we'll get rid of him and someone else will fill in. And then if that doesn't work, we'll try it again. And I don't know where this comes from. I don't really know how to fix it and this is where it goes back to when you asked where I was. I'm so at the bottom with this team, and I don't even know. And you sit here and look at the stats for Jack Eichel and how frustrated he has to be. He was 24th in the league in points. Everyone above him is basically in the playoff team. Take away, obviously, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Other than that, every single other person above him was in the playoffs in regard to points. He's on the outside looking in, and he should be up there with these players. But you look at those players, Huberdeau, Point, Marner, Barkov, Stamkos, they all have someone. And right. I feel like Skinner is that someone, and you can't get rid of him. I think he's in a good point. He can get paid for the Sabres, or he could get paid on the open market. It just depends on where he wants to be.
And really, I think to me it depends on not so much the money, but the years. Like if he hits the open market July 1st and there's other teams that are vying for his services, I could see him getting like a 4-year, $44 million deal. Like 11 a year, like less years but more money, or he could get more years and less money. Either way, he's going to get, I think, upwards of $9 million. I think that's the lowest I could see him getting. I don't think 8.5 is good enough for any team. I think he should get around 9, and that's we'll see. I mean, what team out there do you think could really use him? I think a lot of the teams in the NHL could use a guy like that, right?
I'm very critical of him. And the only reason I am is, and I'm prefacing by saying, yes, I want the Sabres to keep him before I jump into why I'm critical of him, is that he's going to get $9.5 million. And to answer your question, Ottawa, the Rangers, for some reason, I don't know how they afford this stuff, but they'll probably be in the running somehow. They always are. Maybe if Florida can't get Panarin, Skinner would jump in down there. So there are a couple teams that can afford that, but how many points do you want your 9.5? This is a question for you. How many points would you want a $9.5 million player to get?
At least 80.
He had 63 this year.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm a little critical of. Okay, he can definitely score, but 63 points for a $9.5 million player is a lot.
That is a lot.
They put themselves in a position where they have to keep it, or they're going to go out and pay if they can grab a Panarin or try to get a point via, I believe, offer sheet. That's what it would have to be, or Marner offer sheet him. But you get rid of him, now you're filling a void, so you have to keep him. But it's going to be a lot for a 63-point player. Yes, he can score goals, but $9.5 million. I want you putting points on the board, meaning assists also.
Yeah, assists, goals, and obviously being that I look at Jeff Skinner, the type of style that he plays with, and he's like that rat that you got to get it. You got to get him away. You got to shoo him out of the way.
Yes.
You got to get him off the ice somehow. Like if I'm playing against him and I'm lining up against him, I'm going to try to hurt him because that's the only way to really beat him. I mean, he is. I think he's reaching the prime of his career, so he could get those 80-point seasons. But I don't know if he'll get an 80-point season in Buffalo, and that begs the question, too, to kind of segue here. Your initial reaction as a Buffalo sports fan, you try to be as optimistic as possible, whether it's the Bills or the Buffalo Sabres. But if I were to get your initial reaction when the Buffalo Sabres decided to hire Ralph Kruger, what was your initial reaction? And take me deep inside the mind of Brandon here. I want to hear this for sure.
I guess... thank the Lord it wasn't Jacques Martin or Tippett. I think that was my instant reaction. that was my instant reaction. And then I felt back a little bit. Now, I know of Ralph Kruger
right,
and of his time at Southampton. Be honest with you, I had no idea he used to be the coach for Edmonton, so I really don't want to critique him for that time because I didn't even know he was. I knew that he was the guy at Southampton, and about 2 years ago, I think on a local sports station, they were kind of breaking him down about maybe he could be the new GM. So I read a little bit about him then. It's intriguing, and I liked that they went outside of the box because why not? You really tried everything else. You got the new coach that was defensive minded in Phil Housley, and look what that did for you. You went with a. Also, I think it's funny. I would love to hear where you heard that from. Is your last podcast that someone mentioned Lindy Ruff? I didn't hear that, and that's laughable.
No, it's so bad. I couldn't believe it when I heard someone saying, "Well, maybe they could bring back Lindy Ruff." It was on Twitter. I mean, I'm not gonna go I'm not gonna call the guy out because it's like it's Twitter. But at the same time, it's like okay, Lindy's not coming back. That ship is definitely sailed, and rightfully so. Time for a new era.
And with Kruger, I like that what I've read about him is that he's all about motivation and development. And I think development's huge. Going back to where is that player that was developed in the minors and developed even on like a third or fourth line and worked their way up to be a top scorer in the league? Where was that development? We've lost that somewhere, and we need to get that back. So I like that aspect of him, that he is a development and a motivation. And I got to give this guy credit. Any guy that can bounce between hockey and soccer, he has to be doing something right.
Right.
But I would have liked, I don't know, I'm blanking. Oh, the Chicago Blackhawks coach. I would have liked him.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the guy that ended up going to Florida, and I can't think of his name. Dan Quenneville?
Quenneville.
Yep.
I really would have liked him, and it sounded like he just wanted to go down there and live in nice weather and shoot golf, because I have no idea why anyone would want to go to the Panthers or the Kings. They're basically cap jail, and yet the two big coaches on the market went to those two teams. So I'm intrigued. I think that's kind of the mind of where I'm at right now. I want to see where this goes. I'm interested to see how he's going to finagle all these young players and try to develop the players we have in the AHL, the minors, if you will, because I feel like, I don't know if it was Housley or, who really has the hands-on experience. Is it Taylor? But something's not connecting, and they need to figure that out, and maybe Kruger can come in and kind of handle the situation.
Well, if I were to throw my 2 cents in on it, and just from what I see year in and year out since Darcy Regier was fired, and for all the things that we could say about Darcy Regier and all the ineptitude that he kind of brought towards the tail end of his tenure with the Sabres, he left Tim Murray with a king's ransom of picks, and
Yep.
Tim Murray just squandered all of them. So that set the franchise back multiple years. There's no two ways about it. Outside of Jack Eichel and Sam Reinhart, he made a lot of trades that ended up being failures. He made a lot of moves that sent picks to other teams, and those picks were successes where they would have been successes here because we would have had those picks. So it's really, really hard for me to rack my brain about where it stopped, but really where it was successful was in that day and age where you mentioned Roy, you mentioned Pominville, you mentioned the Mike Webbers, even guys that aren't elite, but guys that maintained a spot on the team. I mean, it's getting to the point where I don't even know who some of these players are on the team.
Like Bailey and Baptiste, they're going to come up, they're going to be good. Well, they're gone. Gooley, the next best great defenseman that we have coming up, he's great. He's gone. These players that they're building up to be these next big things, not big things, good role players, good second, third line players that aren't just going to be there to throw in 10 goals, but maybe 20 goals, 25 goals. These players were supposed to be it, and they just didn't happen. Nothing evolved from it. Now, Ulfverson, I liked what I saw the little time he was up, so hopefully that happens. Maybe Nylander will figure something out. I'm not sure what is even going on there. And that's, if you think about that, on top of wasting first-round picks, we get a first-round pick. He's 8th or 7th overall,
right?
And he can't even produce at a high level in the AHL.
Well, do you think that? I think that's true that he definitely has not produced in the AHL to their liking. But to me, when their season was so far gone this past year, when Phil Housley, the players were not playing for Phil Housley. They were just on the ice just to be there for the love of the game or whatever that they still had. Phil Housley was not getting the players to play for him anymore. But you would think that with all those games that they were losing, they went 10 and 30 and something in that stretch after they won those 10 games in a row. Or 23 and whatever it was. Their record was really bad after that 10-game win streak. Do you think that they should have at least called up Nylander or Olofsson earlier just to see what they had, just to get February, March, and April under their belt, and we would have more to look at heading into this season, rather than calling these guys up in late March, early April, which it seemed like I thought that was a little too late.
I think a changeup would have helped, but you might as well, the Amherst were doing really well. You might as well keep them down in a winning atmosphere. Figure out there, they're going to get more ice time down there because, and that's another thing that is odd to me, is when the Sabres bring these players up, they're getting thrown on third and fourth lines. What is Nylander or Ulfverson going to? Ulfverson eventually got up to Eichel's line, and I thought he did pretty well. But what are they going to learn on a fourth line playing 6 minutes when they could be in Rochester playing 15 minutes? So I think that maybe is the reasoning of why they did bring them up. But a shakeup definitely, and maybe not with bringing people up from the AHL. But why don't you go make a trade, bring someone else in.
The trades, yeah. The fact they waited that long to trade for Montour, who I really didn't feel like they needed even. I like him. I think he's a good player, and I think he kind of fits what they want to do. But it's again, I like him. He fits what they want to do, but I've heard that about every player that they've been able to bring in on a trade, and then 2-3 years down the road, those guys are gone. So it's I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore.
I like the Montour pickup. I think they need to solidify their defense, and I think he will do that. Ristolainen, if they decide to keep him, which I think
that's a huge story.